Well, some weeks comics don't blow me away, but they also don't let me down. Instead, they give me just enough to remind me why I really enjoy being a DC Comics fan. Hi, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Welcome to Essential Issues Weekly, where I talk about DC Comics 1 week after their release on the Ultra tier of the DC Universe Infinite subscription service. In each installment, I pick an assortment of comics to talk about as a DC fan and also explore what, if anything, they have to say about the essential issues of real life. Now, warning, full spoilers for everything I talk about. That's your first and only warning. Right now, we're taking a look at comics originally released to the Ultra tier on October 29th, 2025, and originally published on October 1st, 2025. I think this is going to be a pretty short one. First up, Batman number 2. This is a story that focuses a little bit on the origins of Tim Drake as Robin, well, actually more like his early days of training. And then it has relevance to a story taking place in the present time. What I liked most about this, and I think this is just very specific to me right now, was a scene in which Bruce is teaching Tim how to drive. That rite of passage that all of us have to go through at some point, and usually there's a parent involved that is helping us to learn. And in this case, before Tim can drive the Batmobile, which has like 13 crazy gears or something, he's got to learn how to drive just a regular truck. And in this sort of retconned version of continuity where time has been compacted, as has happened a number of times with reboots and resets in the DC universe, Damian is actually around while Bruce is teaching him how to drive. So Damian has been brought into the story at this point. So it's interesting, kind of like just a subtle retcon, but my memory's bad enough I can just shrug and go with it. But really, actually right now, I'm in the process, my wife and I, of teaching our oldest to drive. He's got a learner's permit. And so just some of the kind of tensions that are going on between Bruce and Tim as Bruce is trying to teach him to drive, they definitely hit home. And this is something I've appreciated in various ways in Batman stories of the last 5 to 10 years, where they lean into sort of the father figure that Bruce is to these adopted sons of his. We've seen a lot more of that with Damian, of course, but to see a moment like this where we have a flashback that shows a similar dynamic of parent and child between Bruce and Tim was very, very welcome. Among other, of course, cool comic booky things going on, and that's Batman number 2. Then we've got Batgirl number 12, still following this journey that Cassandra Cain is on, that is hoping to kind of bring an end to the forces of evil that ultimately resulted in the death of her mother, the Lady Shiva, and so she's kind of haunted by that, and I'm finding this story okay, not super exciting. I think I'm ready to move on. I'm still interested in Cassandra Cain. I think she's enigmatic and haunted, things that I like about some of my characters, but I'm ready for this particular story to kind of like be over. But there was one moment where a character kind of challenges her a little bit and asks her what is the difference between vengeance and justice, where Cassandra Cain is saying she wants justice, but really, this is very personal, and it's more about vengeance. How does she tell the difference? And I think that's something very valuable for us to reflect on. I think we can find ourselves in ways being petty to other people, giving people the cold shoulder when they have hurt us in some way. And even if we don't consciously recognize it, there's part of us that thinks they deserve the treatment that I'm giving them. And in that kind of attitude, we are trying to bring about, well, in our minds, we probably think of it as some little form of justice, incomplete though it may be, but when it's actually vengeance, and we don't have the objectivity, the true sense of justice and fairness that only God has to really fairly, without falling short or overkill, bring about justice for those who have wronged us. That really can't be our responsibility. We're not in a position or having the wisdom to do that. So little moments like that, I think that's a kind of common question in comic books. So I don't think it's going to stand out to most readers, but it did just kind of occur to me that, this is something to kind of keep tabs on when we are feeling frustrated, angry with someone else because of the way they've treated us. What is our thought life about them? What's our disposition toward them? And are we in some way kind of justifying in our minds our behavior toward them, our negative behavior toward them, as being justice, when in fact it's just kind of a petty vengeance, if at best. Anyway, that's Batgirl number 12. Well, then we've got Cheetah and Cheshire rob the Justice League number 3. In issue 2, they finished assembling the team of third and fourth string villains in the DC universe, or just characters that maybe aren't necessarily villains, and they are planning out this heist. And this is the issue where the stakes, the mission, the challenge all get brought into focus. For those not familiar with this story so far, this small group of villains wants to get their hand on something, I think it's called the Power Bank. And this is a concept that spins out of the Absolute Power crossover event, where a bunch of powers got kind of swapped around between characters in the DC universe. Well, as part of apparently the Atom Project, which was also a tie-in story of that event, the Justice League now has this sort of artificial power bank, so that if something like this ever happens again, powers get stolen, swapped, whatever, there were some rare cases where the powers never found their way back to their original owners. And so that was a problem that the Atom Project in part was trying to solve. And so the power bank seems to be the result of that. So that if something happens and Superman gets his powers stolen, well, in some sense, they have like a copy of Superman's powers, of like all the Justice League members' powers in this bank, so that they can be restored to those they've been stolen from. And this, of course, seems like such a crazy, bonkers 1950s pseudoscience at best concept, so much as to be basically magic. But in terms of like just conceptually it existing as a problem to solve, a potential MacGuffin, or just like a cause of all kinds of chaos in the DC universe, I love this idea for that. And that these villains could get their hands on it. As they rightly observe, any government, any number of villains would be dying to get their hands on this. If they can pull off this heist, they would have just incredible riches at their disposal, even just to like rent these things, that rent out powers. I mean, like, so it's kind of crazy, but I'm really engaged with the concept. And in this issue, as in every good heist story, they have someone giving a breakdown of all the security measures, all the factors in play on the Justice League satellite, one by one, going through the list and, realizing, okay, they're showing us all the obstacles that have to be accounted for in order for this to be successful. And there are a ton of them. As they go down this list, I'm like, well, one of the characters says, so you're telling us this is impossible. I'm like, that's exactly what I'm thinking. And so it has me very interested. Okay, what in the world are they going to come up with that can get past all of these systems? And I like a good story like that. Usually it's not told from the point of view of the villains, but like way back in the day when the villain Prometheus was first introduced, and he was like a one-man Justice League killer, and stormed the Watchtower. I think he was stealing something too. But anyway, just all the way he'd planned it out and accounted for everybody was just like, it was brilliant. I love seeing that play out, and the heroes really kind of put not just in their place, but like beneath the heel of the villains. And these guys are such kind of like, I don't want to say losers in terms of their character, but in terms of their recognition on a meta level, most of these characters are unrecognizable. Nobody cares about them. And those, who are aware of them don't take them very seriously. It's an underdog story. And so I'm very much engaged with the idea that these guys could pull this off. Of course, that would bring all kinds of chaos to the DC universe. So I think ultimately this power bank is not going to be in the hands of villains and to the highest bidder and that kind of thing. But I hope that they can, even if they don't permanently win long term, that they can at least pull off the heist. And of course, it's a story where you get characters with different personalities all abrasively rubbing against each other, and we see their reactions to that. So it has some nice character-driven elements as well. So yeah, still very early, just the third issue into whatever this is going to be. If it's a mini-series or a long-running series, I think it's probably just a mini-series, but man, I'm really enjoying Cheetah and Cheshire rob the Justice League League as of issue number 3. Then finally, we've got JSA number 12, which brings the Ragnarok storyline to an end. And weirdly, for the second time, the cover says Ragnarok Part 2, but then in the interior art and text, it's like, I don't know, Part 12 or something like that. This story has been going for a while. I like the way they're incorporating past members of the Justice Society, all kinds of callbacks to various members that have been parts of various incarnations of the Justice Society. That's something that Jeff Johns did really well in the run that I think made JSA one of the most well-known books and teams in the DC universe. However, what is still lacking here is the way that Jeff Johns could bring out characters' personalities. We do have some personality elements for sure on display here, but not to the degree that Jeff Johns, I think, was really known for bringing out personalities and having these characters interestingly interact with each other, given their different personality types, their different backgrounds, and things like that. We're seeing little hints of that, but comparatively, it's just far less, and this is much more of an action plot-focused book. We're moving from this event to this, to this, to this, to this, and then we're done, you know. And so it feels still a little bit rushed. That said, it is still winning points for me for all the different incarnations and members of the JSA that it is referencing. And at the very end of this issue, Kid Eternity, which is one of my most welcome additions to this iteration of the team, has an encounter with the Spectre. And Kid Eternity, her power is to basically borrow powers of dead superheroes, and specifically so far, dead members of the JSA. Well, is the Spectre dead? Well, it depends on which part of the Spectre we're talking about. She seems at the end of issue 12 to be interacting with the actual agent of God's wrath. That's how he identifies himself. In which case, this is not a dead creature, but some kind of a spiritual being. I think it's been considered maybe an angelic creature of some kind in the past, but it's certainly, if it is, then it's arguably a fallen creature that God just still kind of corrals and wrangles for his purposes. I don't know. There's, you know, as is the case in all DC characters, you can't really count on a whole lot of consistency. But anyway, by the end of this issue, Kid Eternity is in some way seemingly joined to the Spectre, even referring to herself as the Spectre. And so even as this storyline is coming to an end, it looks like whatever's coming next is going to heavily involve the Spectre. Now that could go one of two ways. One of my favorite comic book runs of all time is John Ostrander and Tom Mandrake's Spectre, for the ways that it surprisingly incorporated and upheld Jewish and Christian theology. So Old Testament, New Testament theology. Of course, there was inconsistency, there was relativism, there's, you know, syncretism, all kinds of things added in that were neither Jewish nor Christian. But the fact that it played up the elements of the Bible much more than any writing of the Spectre that I'd seen up to that point really stood out to me and was certainly welcome to me as a Christian. Now, after that, with the Hal Jordan era, we had writing on the Spectre that very much departed from that, went very kind of pop spirituality and relativistic and feel good, and like the idea of it being an agent of wrath at all, let alone God's wrath, was just kind of out the window in favor of this touched by an angel Casper the Friendly Ghost version of the Spectre that goes around helping people, I don't know, feel good about themselves or whatever he was up to. But this definitely seems to be pulling from the original concept of the Spectre as an agent specifically of God's, the word is used, God's wrath. Now, how much they're going to pull from the Bible, I don't know. That remains to be seen. How consistent will they be? Will it be something that is cool and refreshing? Or, oh, cool and refreshing sounds like a beverage. Or will it be frustratingly relativistic and all kinds of other things that are injected in there? I don't know. We'll see. But when you write a story that features the Spectre prominently, you definitely have my attention. So I am looking forward to JSA, the next issue of JSA, as of finishing JSA number 12. As for my ring selection this week, I'm going with the blue ring, not because anything was really blowing me away or making me super excited, but there's some neat things in here, both in terms of just comic booky goodness and a little bit of philosophical stuff going on in here. Even in JSA, I forgot to mention, we do see that Liberty Bell and Our Man, they do seem to be separating, not necessarily divorced, but she is leaving the JSA, just a still image with no explanation about it. So I'm wondering if there's going to be some kind of healing and repairing of that relationship long term. I would love for that to happen. But anyway, there's thematic stuff going on, philosophical stuff going on, and of course the comic booky goodness that I come to comics to first and foremost. So all of that makes me hopeful that maybe more like this will be coming in the future. And I think those are all of my thoughts on comic books for now. As always, love getting your thoughts and reactions in the comments below. You can also get this content as a monthly podcast, collect it all together if you would like. christiangeekcentral.com is where you want to go for that, and tons more content made for you as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. For more chat about geek entertainment, answers to your questions, and news from the wider world of Christian geekery, get the Christian Geek Central podcast today on iTunes and other podcast services.